morning, and welcome to the Pitchline Chronicles, where fans become family. I am Uncle Tats. I'm here with Rob, Donald, and joining us today is our good friend Spencer. And want to thank everybody for tuning in with us this morning. If you want to, just go ahead. Don't even waste any time. Hit that like button, hit that sub button if you want to join the chat as we get into the discussion. But listen, it seems that there was something that came out right before we came on here, and that is that the Padres are now out on Sasaki as they have signed another international pitcher. So the market is really thinning on where he's going to go, and it's looking, as we've been saying, guess where he's going to end up going? I think that's going to be LA, as we've always been saying. I thought it could have been the Padres up until the news this morning. But it makes you wonder what the trickle effect is going to be with the remaining free agents, as we are hearing reports that there's a lot of disconnect between the agents, the players, and the teams, as players are really unsatisfied with some of the contracts that are being thrown out. Agents are offering contracts to teams out of almost seems like desperation. But I want to throw it. I'll go to Donald first. The fact that the Padres now are claiming it seems like they're going to be out on Sasaki, like what's the next move that you think some of these teams are going to be making as far as the free agents that are available?
Well, he's a different type of free agent. He's an international free agent, so it's a little different than just regular free agents because he's not demanding $200-300 million. It's just international bonus money at the moment. But the Dodgers have got him. It was a week or so ago. It was like 65%. I think that's now up to about 90%. It's either that or he chooses the Blue Jays. I'd be surprised. I don't know why he would choose the Toronto Blue Jays, to be honestly. So I think it's the Dodgers, and then the Dodgers super team is complete, and it's now just like this like Marvel team now, a superhero team that I just can't believe the team that they put together is just insane. But so Sasaki is completely different from the rest of free agent. I think they're separate. The only difference is now that teams can now bid for someone that turned down a qualifying offer. But what do I think about the rest of free agent? Well, I mean, it's not a surprise because this has been happening for years now. This has been going on for too long. The free agent system in baseball's broken and needs to be fixed. I don't know how they're going to fix it because the MLBPA refused to basically do anything different. But there's something wrong here. I mean, we're 3 weeks away from pitchers and catchers, if that. And there's still like 140 people who took part in baseball last year in major leagues that threw innings or had at-bats that are completely unsigned. And that's all going to happen in the space of a month. So there is something wrong here, and a lot of it is to do with the agents and maybe the expectations, but also the ownership. If there's not a demand to have a salary floor, then what's the impetus for teams with a low payroll to have any kind of salary floor? And then on the upper end, if you're getting penalized multiple international draft picks and then draft picks and this, that, and the other, then what's the impetus for teams that want to spend? Plus, you know what the Yankees are like with refusing to want to take part in having to pay like $60 million worth of taxes if you go over a certain threshold. So that's the problem. So there's not a lot of teams that are wanting to spend a lot of money, and now you're looking at guys that are excellent players. Pete Alonso is unsigned, and God knows where he's going to go because it looks like the Mets are playing hardball with him. That's because he went with Scott Boras. Scott Boras is shameless. But another thing, apparently, according to Nightingale, Bregman's refusing to have a short-term contract. So That also plays a part as well. I think these players' expectations might be a little bit unrealistic at this stage. There's just not a lot of teams that want to spend, and then the teams that do want to spend are harbored by penalties for spending. So it's a it's a broken system that needs fixed. The best thing that baseball could do is adopt like a NBA or NFL free agent policy where it's like, or even like soccer, where it's like open for a month, and then it's like a month, 2 month transfer window, and then that's it. Get that work in, and I think it would be exciting. I mean, geez, how exciting would it be as a panel where we'd be constantly sitting to oh, this guy's going this. Oh wow, this is just a breaking news. This has happened. That's what needs to happen in order for people to pay attention to baseball, because the sport is good, but the system is broken, and there's no excuse that 3 weeks away from what would be their form of training for the new season, and 140 people plus are completely unsigned. That's a horrible look for Major League Baseball. Needs fixed.
Yeah, I want to throw it to Rob and then Spencer, but I want to bring up this comment here from Ken. MLB will have to adopt the NFL free agent policy. They are have it where they have a signing period. None of this dragging out the shit out garbage. Is there something that they need to really, I mean, we've been saying over the last few years that we've all been working together that, there's multiple ways that MLB can fix a lot of their flaws and still improve on their public perception. Do you think, Rob, that there needs to be something where they adopt something similar to what the NFL does, or in other sports where it's really just a limited time frame, not the whole off season?
I mean, we can talk to we're blue in the face, and we kind of already have. We spent 4 years complaining about the offseason. Yep. The bottom line is the owners and the players are both greedy, they're both stingy, and they're both two of the worst run entities in sports. The MLBPA and the owners are awful. That's why we had that terrible lockout, and it wouldn't surprise me if we're in for another one when the next CBA comes up. So MLB's offseason is terrible. It takes too long, and yet it's really not that long if you think about it. It starts immediately, and it runs all the way until even into spring training. It's still technically going on. We saw last year several signings happen during the spring. So they need to. The first thing they can do is, we talked about it several times, a salary floor. Because if you have teams like the Marlins who are spending $50 million on their entire roster, and they're not getting penalized at all. They're only worried about a grievance. But you got teams like the Dodgers and the Yankees and the Mets and the Phillies and all these other teams that are well over these thresholds that are trying to win, and they got to pay these teams that aren't spending the money. At least the Athletics are starting to spend finally, but these other teams that don't take the revenue sharing, and it's broken. It's a very broken system, and that's why. And also with the qualifying offer shit, like, you don't see these things in other sports. That's why you have players like Alex Bregman and Pete Alonso, Anthony Santander, Jack Flaherty, even though he's not even tied to the qualifying offer. There's reasons why there's some top tier talent still sitting in free agency, and it's January 17th. Is one player, one international signing really holding up all of these guys signing? Yeah. That's insane to me. As good as Roki Sasaki is, the entire league probably already knew he was going to be a Dodger. So why was anybody holding back? The only team that could say it's hold back is San Diego. That's the only team that should have been hold on, we might have a chance at this guy. The Yankees never had a chance at him. The Mets never had a chance at him. A lot of these other teams never had any chances at him. So the fact that one player is holding up so much, I know they have the franchise tag, but can you implement that? They have that's technically the qualifying offer. A player can take that on a 1 year, but it's broken. The whole system's broken, and that's why we're sitting here January 17th, just like we were last year. The Boris 5 or the Boris 4, whatever it was, still sitting, and here we are again. Boris clients still sit. So what's the comment? Is it just baseball problems, or is it just a Scott Boras problem? Because a lot of these other top talents that aren't with Scott Boras, unless you're Corbin Burns and Juan Soto, you're going to sign. But all of his other clients that he's trying to price out immediately, Guess what? They're still sitting in limbo. And is it a Scott Boras thing? Is it a Major League Baseball thing? Who knows? We've been trying to talk and trying to think of ways to fix this for 4 years now on this channel, going on 5, as have many other channels. Many other baseball executives would like to see this get fixed. Players are mad. That's what John Heyman's saying. They think it's insane that this many players are sitting in free agency. I don't know what the heck is going to happen. I don't know what's going on, but this has been going on too long, and I'm kind of sick of talking about it because it seems like every year we get to doing the exact same thing around this period of time. We're talking about it in mid-January. How is this guy still a free agent? Well, baseball has a bad system.
It's broken, man. It's completely broken. They need to
Well,
do
what
something.
you guys describe as broken, I would actually characterize as out of control. Call it what you want, but I see it as a runaway train steaming down the tracks, and the hill is just getting steeper and steeper. So how do we fix this? Owners want to demand something like a ceiling, or players want to demand like a floor. Okay, the CBA comes to an end. They go into negotiations. The players demand a floor. The owners refuse to do that. The owners want a cap. The players refuse to have a cap. The season comes around. The season starts. There's no baseball. We go on strike or we go on a lockout, whatever it may be. Everybody holds on to their grip until the owners start getting tired of losing money. However, one little X factor that we have now is the owners learned from 1981 to have better strike insurance. So could they handle a completely lost season? Unfortunately, the answer to that now is yes. Still, they understand the ramifications after going through it in 1994 and missing out in the World Series. But that was now 30 years ago. So how do we stop the cycle? I don't know how we stop the cycle because we are in a situation where I'm seeing a lot of what you would call paralysis by analysis. The agents come in armed with all of their information, why their clients should get certain amounts of money. The teams are now armed with analytics, and they are armed with information substantiating why the players or the agents should not get a certain amount of money. So this is a cycle, whereas you can call it broken, you can call it out of control, but it is messed up. And I'm tired of this cycle as well, seeing free agents, sitting out like what we're seeing with Pete Alonso. But there's a new little factor that we have going on that's going to not help things. You have a $700 million plus contract for Shohei Ohtani, and now you have a $700 million contract for Juan Soto. And it is astonishing to me that sometime in this century, we will probably see a $1 billion player. And with that much money on the table, with Major League Baseball now going from a $4 billion a year industry to now an $11 billion a year industry, I don't see the cycle stopping. I think the hill is getting steeper and steeper. But you know something? Eventually, that hill is going to turn into a right angle, and eventually you stop going down the tracks and you start free falling.
Yeah, no, there's definitely major issues throughout. And like we've said,
Good points there, Spence. Good job, man.
Tons of times. I've always been saying I think the qualifying offer is one of the first things that would need to go in the next CBA. And not so much the qualifying offer, but everything that's attached to it. There's too many penalties on teams that don't get their player back. Or if you sign a player that's attached to one, it's so flawed that's why you're having guys like a Bregman that's possibly still, and not so much the years of the contract, but everything else that gets attached to it is just kind of like salt on the wound for teams willing to, like we've pointed out, like teams that are willing to spend the money but get punished for it. I just think that's wrong. And with guys like Alonso, it's really a shame of and I know it's the Mets, and we really don't give them too much attention here. But here's a guy that's been your franchise player and because you've already spent so much, spent money on Soto, that now you want to, complicate things by getting into a debate with the agent and the player, and nothing's getting resolved. And now, if you do get him back, now you're gonna have a disgruntled employee, a disgruntled player. So who wins in that situation? Really, nobody. The fans definitely lose.
Well, you know what I think that brings up, Bobby? What does baseball want from fans? It wants us to go to the ballpark.
It wants our money. That's what they want.
It wants our money, but to get our money, it wants us to have an emotional attachment to the team. It wants us to love our players. It wants us to think that we could almost be friends with players. Wouldn't you guys like to have dinner with Aaron Judge? Wouldn't you guys like to be friends with Garrett Cole? Wouldn't you like that? That's what baseball wants. That's the drug it sells us. What that tells me is that it has to be more than just the wins and the losses. It has to be more than just the hits and the strikeouts. Sometimes you have to look at baseball and your players as bigger than the game. In the Mets situation, that's what I think you have to look at is Pete Alonso. The way they're going about negotiating with him, they are just looking at him as a player, how he can produce, how long that he can last. They are not looking at what he means to the fans, even if it is at the detriment of the team, 4 or 5 years from now. Now, you should, as they always say, don't feel bad for millionaires, because you're right. Pete Alonso, he's probably living in a nice big house, driving a nice big car. He's got a good-looking woman to go along with him. So I understand that. But you do feel for him. You feel for him from the standpoint of he is finally at that point in his career where he's ready to test the market. He's pretty much a proven baseball player. And unfortunately for his timing, he is getting screwed. And as far as the Mets go, he is dealing with David Stearns, who is now in a big-time market. But remember, he comes from a small-time market, and he has small-time thinking. This is something that I didn't invent myself. I heard Joe Beningo say this. Joe Beningo, one of the few sports hosts on WFAN, still worth listening to. But he said that, David Stearns, he's a small market manager. And what you're seeing is small market negotiation going on with Pete Alonso. And forgive me, I don't mean to be preaching to the choir. I don't know if you guys heard, but the Mets offered him another deal, a 3-year deal. He turned it down. It turned out the deal was like $75 million for 3 years. Okay, that's really a long ways from the $158 million over 7 years that he was presented in 2023. But at some point, you got to respect your players. The Mets strategy is as Pete keeps coming back, they keep going lower and lower in dollars and years. That's a terrible way to treat your players. What player in the future is even going to want to come to the Mets if they have to deal with David Stearns? That's something you've got to think about also. I think it's a shame what's happening to Pete Alonso, and I feel bad for the New York Mets fans. But I mean, as a bitch.
I fucking don't. I don't feel bad for them. Fuck that. You think I can? I don't care less about how they feel. They spent an entire 2 months yapping about, you guys Minnesota, weren't you mad at me? No, screw them. You know what? I respect Cohen and Stearns for being stern about this, because you know what? I guarantee there'd be some Yankee fans out there that'd be calling Steve Cohen cheap if he was the owner of the Yankees and he did this with one of our players.
Yeah.
He turned down a big extension. Same thing with Alex Bregman. These are two players that got extension offers and turned them down, and now they're kind of regretting it. This isn't an owner thing. You can't blame the Mets for not wanting to be like, well, hold on, we're giving you a 7-year commitment right now, and you're gonna get paid $22 million to stay here. You're already 30. Like, this would basically be the last contract of your career, unless you have like another 2 years left in you at the end of this deal. But he turned it down. I get it. He wants more money. Okay, but if you're going to turn down 30 or 25 million a year for 3 years and a chance to maybe re-enter the market while you're still somewhat in your prime, what more do you want the Mets to do? No, here's 30 million. They have a budget too, guys. I know Steve Cohen is rich as hell. He's one of the richest owners in all of sports, but the Mets aren't going to say we're just going to spend whatever we want. They just gave out basically $50 million plus to one player. They've already brought in multiple pitchers. They just brought back Winker to like $8 million. They already got Manaea back. They brought in Clay Holmes to an insane contract, and they're still in the market for bullpen pitching. So they have a budget too. What that number is, nobody knows. Like, nobody knows what the Yankees' budget is. It might be 301. It might be higher, like Ken mentioned earlier in the chat. I also think it's going to be higher than 301. Just how much higher, we don't know. But the Mets also have a budget. Steve Cohen has those taxes too. Even though he's got a lot of money, even for a billionaire, you don't want to have to spend $60+ million in taxes. I get it. So the Mets probably have a certain number they won't go over for a player that, outside of the power and the run production, doesn't really offer you that much. He might be a glorified DH if people really want to think about it. He's a terrible defender, right? So I think he should be a Met, but I also don't blame the ownership for being like, we're not going to overpay for you just to have you back, because they have a guy like Vientos that can step in, and maybe they go for a cheaper option at third, or maybe they make a trade elsewhere. They do need a big bat, though, I'll tell you that. They should bring back Alonso, but if you're going to overpay for the guy, that's going to bite, even for a billionaire, that's going to bite you in the ass. So, yeah, they want Vladdy, but the Blue Jays are talking extension with him. I don't know if that's going to get done. But, yeah, I don't feel bad for Mets fans, I'll tell you that much. I feel bad for Alonso, because that dude should be a Met for life. But I also don't feel bad for him in the sense that he had a chance to stay there. But Mets fans, I couldn't give a fuck less about how they feel.
Mets fans, you got a friend right over here. I might be outnumbered by these guys.
Buster Olney reports that Toronto are wanting a return more than what the Yankees had to send out to San Diego for Juan Soto in any Vlad negotiations. So they're going to want a supreme return before they consider trading Vlad, but they haven't said no to it. Yeah. And that is interesting. So they are open to a trade. It just needs to be a massive package. I could care less what the Mets do. I could give a fuck. I could give a flying fuck what the Mets do.
Well, it seems like with the rest of the free agents that are out there, they're pretty much at the point where the strategy is you wait for somebody on another team in a certain position to get injured, and for that team to be in position, needing a pitcher or needing a first baseman. That's with respect to, the remaining free agents that are out there, the Santanders and, the other guys.
But anyway, this is the Yankee show, and we haven't touched on the Yankees at all. I could give a fuck what the Mets do. So I hope they struggle. Let's get to the real important stuff. The Yankees, what's their budget? What's going on? Let's pass it around the panel. Let's start with Rob. Where's your head at right now with the Yankees?
I need a third baseman. Since our show the other day, I've been just trying to think of what they're going to do, what their budget's going to be. If it's 301, then we're not going to get really anybody. I think I'm in line with Ken. It's going to have to be around what it was last year, maybe even higher, if they really want to add a significant player and get 2 more guys for the bullpen. Let's not bring up players that are not available. Let's not make up. I see Mike bringing up Brendan Donovan. Until I see some actual proof that he is available for trade, I'm going to hold my breath on that. Just like the K. Brian Hayes stuff that was going rampant through Twitter yesterday.
Yeah, let's start with that, Rob. What do you think about that?
I think people need to stop fucking listening to these Twitter accounts that don't have actual sources. I've been saying this for 3 goddamn months now. Please do some fact checking before you put out this information. This is an account that has a lot of followers, and maybe they've gotten a few guesses right. But this tweet came out, and it was the only person that said it, that K. Brian Hayes has requested a trade. Michael Kay seemingly fell for it. And the Pirates GM, I think, came out saying that's not true. So, and yet you have people that are going out there putting that out as information and reporting on it. And it's just like, dude, it's not true. And even if it was, is he really a significant upgrade from what we already have? Like, his bat's kind of, he's a good glove, but for $8 million, are you just going to get a good glove? If that's the case, just go get Paul DeJong for like $5 million. So, like, what are we doing here? This is fake information, first of all. Just like even the Arenado
Michael
stuff.
Kay really went on about it, so that's why I mentioned it. It's nothing about some random account. Obviously,
Michael K fell for it too.
Well, yeah. So Kay was saying that obviously he has some connections. I think his father had connections with the Yankees. So, but I think his father was saying that they're doing crazy stuff with the bats over there in Pittsburgh. So he's saying that Brian Hayes would actually be better elsewhere. Do you think that there's upside there in Hayes?
Maybe.
I mean, on the defensive end, yeah, it would fall in line with some of the other moves they've made. But he's not a player. He wasn't on the radar until yesterday. So I don't put a lot of stock into what goes around on social media, whether it's a verified account or not. Like Rob's been saying, do a little research before everybody jumps all over it. Would he help if we're able to move a contract? Possibly, but I mean, there's so many other avenues they can go down, and I think they're not going to be able to do anything really that'll be of any significance until they move some of the salary. I think the biggest question is what's the status on moving Stroman's contract? I think that's going to open it up where a possible trade or free agent signing will be more realistic.
The same thing well, while I agree, I don't really understand why they're waiting on any Stroman deal to happen, considering the luxury tax isn't taken into account until the end of the season. So, it's not like the Yankees are going to be hit by some sort of fine if they go over their own budget. So, anyway, back to Brian Hayes. In 2024, he had a ridiculously horrible season where he was actually putting up DJ LeMahieu numbers of 500 OPS and a slug 290. His batting average was 230. His on base percentage is 280. So he's not getting on base, doesn't hit for any power or anything. So 4 homers, 25 ribs, just 230 batting average. This is dreadful. However, in 2023, we're going to have to rewind the clock. He actually was pretty good. 15 homers, 61 RBIs, OPS of 760, 300 on base percentage, 270 batting average. What the hell happened between 23 and 2024? Did he become Mr. Magoo? What happened here? So, once again, it looks like the Yankees are asking players to rewind the clock if they were to go after them. I don't know. He's got a glove. He's 27, so he's in his prime. But to put up those kind of numbers, it's hard to justify making any kind of trade for him and to be excited about it.
Yeah, totally agree, Donald. I mean, first of all, I'm going to admit, I am into the fantasy of Brian Hayes being in pinstripes and connecting him to his father. We all see that image of Charlie catching the fly ball in 1996, raising his hand with the baseball in the air, running to the diamond. I'm down with that fantasy. I feel it too. But when you look at it objectively, and it's not too hard to look at it objectively, you bring Brian Hayes here, all you're going to do is you're going to get a player that's going to underdeliver, actually not even underdeliver, but he's going to meet the expectations of a player of his caliber, which is to say you're probably getting a guy that hits like 200, 230, will probably struggle in the New York market. Remember, he's in the Pittsburgh market. It's much different when you come to New York. We're always saying that. And I think you're just going to end up with a situation, a repeat of 2024, where you see the Yankees with a very good 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 in the top of the lineup. And then when you get to the bottom of the lineup, you're going to groan about it. And if that includes Brian Hayes, well, then you get what you deserve in that situation. The only thing I'll say on the third base situation, and I don't know if you guys listened to it, but I listened to Buster Olney talk with Michael K yesterday, and he says the Yankees, for now they're sitting quiet. They're not making a move. They're not in a position where they have to make a move. They're sort of letting the move come to them. And unfortunately, to the dismay of this panel, there is the possibility that it rhymes with EA, that might be a possibility, for your third base come opening day, at least with some type of revolvement with Peraza, platooning with Peraza, I should say. So I'm not really expecting the Yankees to make any type of move on that issue anytime soon. They're really not in a position where they have to be compelled to. And this gets back to what we were talking about before. The brokenness, the runaway train of free agency.
Well, that's bad news. And so I just want to bring up a comment from Jay Snow. I heard Buster Olney say yesterday the Yankees are content with going with internal options. If anything, a small move in spring training. I'm going to pass it to the panel before I vomit.
Look, having DJ anywhere near the opening day lineup it'll undo all the whole mood going into the season of any positivity. If they're gonna go with one of these guys, just leave Jazz at third base and put Peraza at second and see what comes into play at that point. I sense it too. That's what he's letting us get our word in before he completely unleashes here. But no, I think they just leave him on the bench. Don't force him down our throats because DJ deserves better for the career that he's given, and it's unfortunate with the injuries. Like I said, he's not an all-star anymore. That's just a fact of it. Is it his age? No, it's just the health of his body. I think that's what's really setting him back. Yeah. So I think the Yankees in this mindset of we'll see where spring training takes us. I think it's going to really rattle a lot of people the wrong way because it gets to the point where, you want to be a fan of a player, but when they don't have it anymore, you have to come to the realization that, he's a nice guy, he's a good player, he was a good Yankee, but his time is up. He's not an everyday player anymore, and the sooner the Yankees realize that, the better off the season will start off.
Yeah, he's becoming more like Jacoby Ellsbury. I hate to say
he's worse than
Ellsbury.
I
loved it when he was doing great. We'll never forget that home run in 2019. But yeah, it's like it's kind of painful to see the arc of his career at this point.
If the New York Yankees in 2025 are relying on DJ fucking LeMahieu to be their third baseman, and what did I say a few weeks ago that my fear is he's going to be the opening day third baseman and bat leadoff? And every day that passes, I said this the other day, every day that passes, the more that fear starts to become reality. This is bullshit, is what it is. That the Yankees are going to potentially, there's still time, they can still make a move. They can still go get Arenado. They can still go get Bregman. They can still go get Ha-Seong Kim. They don't want to do those things, apparently, because they don't want to spend a little bit extra money. These are the kind of things that make fans infuriated when you say your intent is to get back to the World Series and not only get back, but to win it. That's what we're not putting words in anybody's mouths. We're being told this information from the Yankees brass. The intent is to get back and win the World Series. How do you plan on doing that when you're relying on a skeleton to play third base? You're relying on a guy who doesn't have a foot. He's been injuring the same foot constantly. He can't hit anymore. I'm sorry. It is a damn shame what happened to him. But we're going to keep relying on this guy year after year after year when he continues to get worse and worse. No matter how many injuries he has, he's gotten worse since 2022. Every year it's gotten worse. This is the guy you want to rely on? At least if you would have said, we want to go with Peraza and Cabrera. All right, fine. You're going with the youth. I get it. But they're going to continue to spin this DJ narrative on us? Why is it that everybody else can see this guy is not what he used to be, but the New York Yankees? Why are they the only team that does this? Other teams, they see a player that even if he has a lot of money owed to him and he's not contributing, they let him go. We saw the Astros do it with Jose Abreu last year. We've seen countless teams do this before with players that are making a lot of money and they say, look, you're not producing, we got to let you go. They did it with A-Rod, for crying out loud. And A-Rod in 2016 was actually better than what DJ was last season. And we're going to go out there and trot this guy out at third base or second base next year as a starter. It's absurd. I know I might be getting ahead of myself because tomorrow Brian Cashman could pull a rabbit out of his hat and go trade for Nolan Arenado. But right now, DJ LeMahieu is probably your starting third baseman on this team. Or second baseman. And it's a goddamn joke that the New York Yankees, who just won the American League Championship Series and were a few fundamental mistakes away from being in within arm's reach of a championship for the first time since 2009, are going to go and trot out one of the worst players in baseball last year as a starter for a World Series contending team. You can't tell the fans that you're serious about winning and saying our third baseman is DJ. We trust DJ. He's going to turn it around. He's the healthiest he's ever been. I don't want to hear any of that crap. We hear this about every aging player. He's in the best shape of his life. He's in the best shape of his life. All it takes is one foul ball off of his foot that he's had every single spring training since 2021 for that to go away. Remember, it happened last year. He got hurt, and he's going to be ready by opening day. No. He'll be ready in a week. No. It took him like a month and a half, 2 months to come back, and when he came back, he was terrible to a point where every single one of us were laughing at him. We were predicting. There's a video of us watching the Yankees Red Sox that say guaranteed double play, and we celebrated because we were right. That's how much of a joke this player has become. It's a damn freaking shame that it's come to that, but how can you, as the New York Yankees, say that's the guy when there are several options out there that are better? And I don't want to keep beating the same dead horse, but until these guys are off the market, they are on the market and they make your team better. Why are you not trying to make your team better? Because of a budget? You're the New York Yankees. I get it. You don't have to go 350, 360. You don't have to do what Michael Kay said and get $600 million. He pulled that number out of his ass. And you can just go up a few extra million and make this team better. And guess what? DJ becomes a utility player off the bench, and you don't have to worry about his inevitable injury that's going to prevent him from playing. And you don't have to see him 5 times a week. I know Donald's ready to rant, but it's pissing me off, and I feel like he and I are on the same wavelength of anger right now because I can see the steam coming off of his head and it's starting to boil up in mine. It's ridiculous. Why are we doing this? Why are the New York Yankees in 2025 relying on a way past his prime DJ LeMahieu? Come on, be better, Yankees. Everybody in this chat, everybody on any other channel can see this, but the New York Yankees, and it's infuriating. Donald, I pass it to you.
I mean, I can't top that. That's the facts, man. That's the facts. As I said in the last episode, we need more people holding the Yankees accountable. Hold them accountable. Hold them, but not accountable. Hold them to the same standards as they used to hold themselves. I'm only asking them to put their money where their mouth is, because their mouth has been very active since Juan Soto went to the Mets. We're going to be a juggernaut. We're going to stockpile talent. I heard both those things come from the mouth of Brian Cashman. We're going to be a juggernaut. We want to stockpile talent. Since he said stockpile talent, the only talent he brought in was a 37-year-old, 4 years older than Anthony Rizzo. And that's stockpiling talent. And then since then, it's been like, oh, we're going to check in the margins here. We're going to look at this little dude here that bat 150 and has a 500 OPS. And, oh no, we're going to bring back DJ LeMahieu because he's in the best year. This has been the same shit every single year. And that's what I said in the last episode. And people were getting pissed at me for being angry. But I've seen this story before. Aaron Hicks kept coming back annually. Aaron Hicks came back after he dropped a ball, stared at it, and looked at it and studied it like it was an alien from outer space while the bases were being rounded like nothing on earth. And he was just staring at it, studying it, wondering if it was going to jump up and say hello to him. And then he came back the next year. So the idea that the Yankees hold anybody to any kind of standards is unbelievable. Aaron Hicks kept coming back. Josh Donaldson came back. He was a disaster, a flaming pile of shit. He came back the next year. IKF was a disaster at shortstop in this first year. They kept gaslighting us that he was the best shortstop in the world, and they tried to force shortstop on him again the next year, and he actually himself had to go to Aaron Boone going, I can't do it. Put me in center field, left field. So this is a trend, man. This has been going on for a long time, and it actually precedes 2017, 2018. As I mentioned, Nick Johnson. What the fuck was he doing playing for a World Series caliber team in 2010? Because of some imaginary budget. We can't bring back the World Series MVP, so we're going to bring in Nick Johnson. Right? And I keep saying it, but I mean, it's been an annual thing. There's always going to be this. It always gets to the point where we're one move away, and they're like, "No, let's bring in Carter. Let's bring in frickin' this dude. Let's bring in Franchi Cordero. Let's bring in just these nonsense players, and try and write it out." So I'm sorry, I'm not buying it anymore. I'm done with it. Stop bullshitting us. If you're gonna say that you're gonna stockpile talent, or else don't say it at all. I'm only asking him to be held to the same standards as what's coming out of his own frickin' mouth. Stop saying this shit, because what it sounds like is Yankee PR. That's what it sounds like. That's what it sounds like is, right, we lost a generational player because he actually went elsewhere instead of us. So what we're going to do is we're going to tell our shareholders, our fans, and everyone that has money committed to the Yankees, we're still the Yankees. So we hear the Yankee PR, blah, 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 blah. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. We're going to be the best. We're going to be the greatest. And nothing really happens. So I'm sorry. I'm numb to it at this point. And, you know, I'll save a lot of my rants for when there's a reason to. But, I mean, at the end of the day, from what we're hearing, this just sounds like what we've heard. This just seems like the same shit annually. What's Greg Bird, Jared Williams? You know what I'm saying? It's just like there's always going to be one player that they kept parading around who's going to turn around. He never fucking does. And it's an annual shit. And the Yankees, once again, fall a little bit short. And then we have to go and make a deal at the deadline to try and save them from something they could have done during the offseason. Look at this market. There isn't a huge market. There's a lot of great players available. And by the way, we need some offense. We lost Juan Soto. I don't know if anyone forgot about that, but we kind of lost someone who gave you like 150 RBIs and 45 home runs. And the Yankees' answer to that is almost a 40-year-old Paul Goldschmidt and Cody Bellinger, who did nothing last year. That's your answer to the offense? So I'm just holding them to the same standard as they have been parading around, that we're still the great big bad Yankees. Well, the big bad Yankees are losing players. Players aren't even interested in them right now. Juan Soto said no. Sasaki said no. Right. Who's interested in coming to the Yankees? I want to know.
The people that are about, past their prime, that are trying to get one more year out of their careers, that's where the Yankees, they'll trip over themselves to get the pen. And that's part of what I don't want to Goldie, he's a great player. Donald, like you said, 2 years ago, we'd be jumping for joy that we had him. Right? Bellinger, 2 years ago, jumping for joy. And I'm glad that we have Bellinger now. I think he'll be all right. I'm not pissed off with the guys they got. It's more the timing of when they get these guys that kind of sparks the rants amongst the fans. And, I know, myself, I always try to come, for a long time, I was, always the optimist. And they kind of soured me a little bit. And that gets me aggravated. But I know, Spencer, I know you're always the eternal optimist. So I want to get from what we're complaining about and bitching about and honestly right about. What's your perspective?
Well, what you guys are doing is really it's reflective of what the Yankees have done. They started building a building that was supposed to be 10 stories. And for whatever reason, once they got to the fifth floor, they stopped building.
That's a
We're
good
relying
point.
on a
Great
strategy.
analogy.
Exactly. Vis-a-vis the third base, second base situation. The moves that they've made, while can be somewhat applauded, they are putting us in a position where we have to rely on hope. You have to hope that Cody Bellinger has more of an MVP season than one of his down seasons. You have to hope that Goldschmidt's got it somewhere in him that he'll be able to, find that MVP swing and not have a down season once he gets to the Bronx. You have to hope that Giancarlo Stanton still has it in him that he can somewhat repeat the decent season that he had in the regular season last year. There's a lot of hope. We didn't really sign anybody that's more of I don't want to say a sure thing, but the Mets, they know that they're getting an excellent player with Juan Soto. We didn't sign anybody that's had 3 consecutive seasons of 300 batting average or 275 batting average, 25 to 35 home runs. So we don't know what's going to happen. This could either be a great season. The Yankees could win 100 or more games, which I think they are poised to do. But this could also be a disastrous season where we could be looking at the lineup and the only guy that can really hit is Aaron Judge. So a lot of hope and a lot of uncertainty. We are definitely uncomfortable with the uncertainty, but it does feel incomplete. And I think that it's incomplete because you have the agents and the players who are suffering from paralysis by analysis, and they want to have these unreasonable contracts in terms of years and in terms of numbers. And then you have the baseball teams who are also suffering from paralysis by analysis because they have their analytics department and they are making their moves primarily based on history. It's not even science. It's
Yes.
statistics, So, that's why you have this impasse, and that's why there is all of this uncertainty that we have going into the season. And I don't really see how you can build any kind of baseball team like that. So, who knows? But it's frustrating because you're right. We could be. All we have to do is just get a couple more infielders, and I think we'll be set. I think the strategy that the Yankees are doing to answer that from what you guys were raising before, I forget it was Don or Rob, but I think with all the relief pitchers that they have gotten, their strategy is to hold off runs, run prevention, and they recognize the shortcomings of the lineup. I think the situation with Marcus Stroman in the offices of the Yankees, that's probably what they're calling a good problem. It's good to have a Marcus Stroman who we don't really know what to do with because, maybe he can pitch long relief. Maybe he can do some mop-up work for us. Maybe he can be a sixth man. Maybe he can be an emergency starter. So it looks like the strategy right now is more of run prevention. So I'm in agreement with you.
Yeah, well, I remember saying the night that Soto signed, that's what they should do is go more run prevention because you're not replacing that bat. And I don't want to get back into the Soto spiel, but what's up, Lynn? Good to see Lynn in the chat. But a great comment here. Who is it? Because is it Bellinger that's gonna protect Judge? Like, who are we relying on? Because like you said, when Judge was slumping last year, it was Soto and Volpe that were really hitting. And then when Judge got hot, it was Soto and Judge, and everybody else was kind of just up and down, up and down. But those two were so good that it masked
this dude.
We got Giancarlo. And we got to hope that Giancarlo is healthy enough. Because if we lose him for the inevitable month that he's out, then we're going to be in trouble. So the Yankees have to... That's why I think they have to get another bat. I'm not saying it has to be Alex Bregman or it has to be Nolan Arenado, but you'd prefer it to be one of those guys that... Because they both fit the run prevention method while also giving you a good bat. Yeah. Like, you can't tell me that... oh, well, just go get K. Brian Hayes, who's struggling offensively, but he's a good defender. Well, you're not really addressing the offensive needs right now, because I think the offense can be good, but if we have one injury, and I mean one injury, we're in trouble.
Yeah.
And that's the issue, because you don't know if Goldschmidt does what he did last year, okay, he'll be fine. That's about league average. If Bellinger does what he did in 2024 with more of a 2023 mix, I'm not worried about Bellinger. I think he's going to be really good. I'm not worried about Judge. I'm not worried about Stanton. But we need to have a better third year from Volpe, a better sophomore year from Austin Wells. We have to hope that Dominguez doesn't have those rookie mistakes that Volpe did. We have to hope that Dominguez is good. His projections, by the way, there's this new projection system on Fangraphs called Oopsie. It's phenomenally named because it makes a lot of mistakes, but they got Dominguez projected for a pretty solid year. I think like a 740 OPS or something like that.
Yeah.
Wow.
I would love to see that, but we're relying on a lot of things. You got to turn back the clock on some players. You got to rely on some guys to stay healthy, some guys to be better than they were in their rookie seasons or their sophomore seasons. So there's a lot of things that can go really, really well, but there's a lot of error that could happen in this lineup. That's why one more good bat could really make us at ease, feel at ease, be like, okay, it's not Juan Soto, but you still got Judge, and let's say it is Arenado. You got Judge, Goldschmidt, Stanton, Bellinger, Arenado, Wells, Jazz. You have a lineup that can produce offense. They're all going to be really good at their positions defensively, and you've got arguably the best pitching staff in the entire sport, and especially in the American League. The team's going to win a lot of games, and it would make us as a fan, at least myself as a fan, feel so much more at ease knowing that you take DJ LeMahieu out of that starting depth chart, you sit his ass on the bench because you don't want to cut him, and you know that he's there in case of emergency. And that makes me as a fan feel a hell of a lot better about this team. But right now, this team is a bat away from having one of the best off seasons I've seen from Brian Cashman. I think they're going to get lefties. I'm not worried about that. They need at least one, maybe two, but that's coming. But you cannot sell me on one of these cheap bats if you're not going to spend heavily more on the bullpen. Like I said the other day, if you go get Tanner Scott, fine, go get Paul DeJong. But if you're not going to get Tanner Scott, and they probably won't, you cannot tell me you're going to be cheap at both of those positions of need now. Because you went cheap at first. I know it was $12.5 million, but you could have had Christian Walker. You went cheap at first base. You could have had Pete Alonso, yeah. But you can't go cheap at first, third, both lefties out of your bullpen and be like, well, we did get Max Fried and we did bring in Bellinger. I get that. They've spent money this year, but you can't go cheap at every other position of need simply because you brought in Cody Bellinger. Like, you have to either spend heavily more on this bullpen, make sure nobody can score against you, and then you can bring in a cheap third base option, or you spend a little bit extra for that third base option, and then you can go get two cheaper lefties. You can bring in Brooks Raley and have him come back midseason and bring back Tim Hill. This bullpen's going to be fine, but I just need at least one lefty. You want to wait for Raley and make him like one of those de facto midseason improvements or midseason acquisitions? Okay, whatever. You can go cheap on the bullpen options if you spend on the third base. You can go cheap on third base if you spend heavily more on that bullpen. Either way, you should spend a little bit more money, up that budget, another $20 million or something, because you're Hal Steinbrenner, you're the New York Yankees, you can afford it. And make sure this team is loaded and ready to go so they can compete with the Dodgers if they do get back to the World Series. I still think we're the best team in the AL, like I said the other day, but we still need one or two more moves that really solidify us to not only be really good in the regular season, but to get us over the hump in October. Because if DJ LeMahieu's taking at bats in October, good fucking luck getting back to the World Series.
I mean, you're still asking half the lineup to rewind the DeLorean 12 months. Because Volpe's going to have to be Volpe in his rookie year than this past year. Volpe was actually better in many ways. Not defensively, he was better defensively this year, but even though he won the Gold Glove in his rookie year. But offensively, he was almost a little better because he had a bit more power. So you're almost asking him to rewind. You're definitely asking DJ to rewind. He was like a negative 1.1 player last year. He's a complete net negative. So you're asking him to rewind 12 months. Then you're asking Cody Bellinger to rewind 12 months. And you're asking Goldschmidt to rewind 12 months. How realistic is it to get half your batting lineup, half your lineup, to rewind their career 12 months? How realistic is that? Let's be completely, perfectly honest about that. How realistic? Another thing, right? What's our lineup? It's really realistic because we don't know what these guys are going to do. We don't know whether Goldschmidt's going to be the same Goldschmidt as last year. We don't know these things. We have to see. We're hoping that he's closer to the Goldschmidt that he was post-July, but we have to still take the whole season as a whole. You can't just take the stat that you like. Oh, well, he bat 900 OPS for the last 6 weeks of the season. Great. How about the whole season? I'm sorry, you have to take that all into account. So what we realistically have is Big G and Aaron Judge. By the way, that's what we've had every year prior to Juan Soto. And we never touched a World Series. And that was with them in their primes. So let's be realistic here. If that wasn't enough pre-Soto, why is that enough post-Soto? It just sounds to me like Yankee PR. And I don't buy it anymore. I'm too old. I'm too old for this shit. Because I've been seeing it every year. I don't wave pom-poms for bullshit. And I'm getting a lot of bullshit. So the fact that DJ LeMahieu is even contemplating being the third baseman next year is bullshit. Get me a proper third baseman. If you got Alec Bregman sitting there, if you got Alec Bregman sitting there, go get him. Even get me freaking Arenado. I don't care. Just trade for Arenado. At least someone that can give me good quality defense at third base, which we haven't addressed, by the way. That was a big problem last year. I don't know what the Yankees are imagining is going to happen. The infield defense was completely fucked last year. And the only acquisition was a league average 40-year-old first baseman for $12.5 million. That's your only acquisition. I'm not buying the bullshit PR.
You shouldn't. You shouldn't buy it. John, we don't know. I mean, if we knew, we'd be talking about it, John. I'm sorry. If we had information for you, we'd be giving you information. We just don't have any right now. There is no logic in the Yankees front office. You're right. Look, the good news is you can get a bat in the middle of spring, and you're not going to really worry about having them get into form because they'll already be training. It's pitching that I'm worried about. They need to add some pitching, and I do think they need to get rid of Stroman because making him a sixth starter or a long relief guy is that's not fair to him. He's not a bullpen guy. He's not a sixth starter. He's a guy that you could put in the number 3 spot, realistically, number 4, and he would be solid in that role. You can't pay him $18 million to be your long relief pitcher because that's a bad look. You need to either move him or move somebody else to where he has a spot. I feel bad for Stroman because he didn't do anything wrong. The dude took less to come here. He pitched to the back of his baseball card. He had a strong first half, struggled in the second half. And the Yankees are like, yeah, we're not going to use you in the playoffs. Like, he came here to try to win a championship, and they didn't even let him get a chance to help try and win a championship. So I do feel bad for the guy. He did nothing wrong. He put aside any differences he may have had, made good with the GM, made good with the fans. After blocking half of them on Twitter, he made good with just about everybody he could. He did everything that you would have wanted him to do to try to get in with the fans. Like, and now we're talking about yeah, and now we got to move him just to sign Paul DeJong. Like, is this what the New York Yankees have become? Like, that to me, that's unfair to Stroman, and that's unfair to the fans that you just told a few weeks ago we're getting after it. So again, I'm not putting words in anybody's mouths. I'm just saying what the ownership has told us, what the GM has told us. So I do feel bad for Stroman. I don't think he's going to be here next year because he just doesn't have a spot in this rotation anymore.
I think one of the Yankee strategies also, just sort of like finish my thoughts on the matter. I think one of their strategies is they are looking at their competitors. They're looking at what the Rays have done or have not done, and the Red Sox and the Orioles. And I think what they do is when they measure themselves up against any of those teams, they say to themselves that they feel that they are better than them. And by the end of the season, that this Yankees team will be at the top of the American League East. I actually agree with that. I do feel that will happen, but you got to play the games, for it to happen. That's why they play the games. But I think that's also part of the strategy you see. In other words, don't make a move until your enemy makes a move. Don't make a mistake. Let your enemy make the mistake first. That seems to be the strategy. And looking at the totality of, players that are available, free agents that are available, I think they've done the calculus, and that's why we see the lack of movement from the team.
So we've got 60 odd people in the chat, and I don't believe we've got 60 likes. So let's start getting the likes up, everybody. Hit the like for Spencer. Hit the like for Rubinho. Hit the like for Uncle T. Get the likes up for all of us.
Thumbs up.
Even if you're more optimistic about the state of our third base situation than we are, doesn't matter. Hit that like button. It's all just opinions at the end of the day. Whether you like them or not, we're bringing you that fire every single day, essentially. So hit that like button for us, please. And Uncle T, why don't you say hello to some of us in the chat?
It's going up. You see, we got Lynn in the chat from the upper deck. You got Jonathan hanging out with us as always. Razil, Jared, John Beagle, Dad, Ken. You got J Riv 77. What's going on, J Riv? We also keep scrolling here. John S. Lou. What's going on, Lou? We have Graham, as always, joining with us. And we've had a phenomenal amount of comments that have been coming in. And appreciate every single one of you that do drop those comments. But look, there's a lot to be left. There's a lot left to be desired with this Yankee roster. I think that's what goes without saying, right? And Stephen B, you got Stephen B hanging out. You just dropped that comment in to make sure to let me know he's still here.
It is super soaker.
Yeah, that's gonna be the new joke of the year. But that's all right. We always love to bring in a new joke to the show.
I also liked Uncle Tat saying "rattled the wrong way," as if you could get rattled the right way. Yeah. Well, when you said that, I actually Googled it. I was like, rattled the wrong way? No, came up with no hits.
If there's a way to mix a bunch of words together that it doesn't make any sense, I'm your guy. But there's a lot to be desired about with this roster, and there's still a lot of question marks. But I'll leave it with this before we sign off. The one thing that that is not in question.
Len, why'd you have to do that? I did walk myself into that, to be honest. This is a family show, Len. Family show.
One thing that is for certain, we do have the best subscribers in this family of ours. Appreciate every single one of you. So if you would kindly hit that like button, share this out, help us out with the algorithm. My examples are
Hey, yo!
All right. But listen,
Spanks, how are you doing, man? How is everything at your end? You doing okay?
Everything is good. Still slowly improving. Not perfect yet, but I'm definitely in a lot better spirits than when you guys saw me back in the middle of summer last year. Always appreciated your show. Always appreciated your concern, and I thank you for that. And making the best of my involuntary retirement.
And do you still have plans for opening day?
Yes, I plan to go to opening day. Now, as far as like putting together a plan to get there, that's something that I still have to do. I've always got things lined up, but nothing is concrete yet. But that is definitely the goal to get to opening day. I will say one change this year is probably going to be I might be going to opening day without my partner, my little daughter Victoria. She likes it better when it was just me and her going to the games. Now that I need assistance getting there, that's not really as fun for her, and I can sort of understand that. So I'm looking for other ways to get to opening day. Not really sure how I'll get to, or even the nature of going to Yankee Stadium during the regular season. It's opening day for me, and at least getting to the first game of the postseason, and of course getting to the World Series if the Yankees are lucky enough to get to the World Series. Those are the main games that I want to get to. It's more challenging these days, but I'm doing my best, and my heart is always there, always tuning into the games. That's for sure. You know that.
Well, you've been with us since day one, man, and if there's any way we can help get you to opening day, we'll try and think of something.
I appreciate that. You guys are helping me. This show is like my it's like my IV. And the nutrients are going in the arm. Getting my NY. Are we still on, guys? Are we still on the air?
Yes.
Yeah, we're still on the air. We're still on the air enough for us to see that John S., who asks us the same 17 questions every show, tells us our podcast sucks. Well, maybe don't ask the same questions every
here's why your
87
podcast
seconds.
is great. I'm gonna pivot very briefly. I know it's towards the end of the show. Just wanted to get this in. First of all, Bob Uecker, who was an institution in baseball, passed away. Had some Yankees connection. George Steinbrenner at one point wanted to hire Uecker. Uecker never really took the offer seriously. Growing up, I remember him hosting the baseball bunch. I remember him, of course, we all know his famous line in Major League, just a bit outside. I think you're going to hear that remark made a lot more this season, and it will be nice to pay tribute to Bob Uecker. Very complicated man also. A lot of people don't know this. I just found this out yesterday. He sadly, he had two children that preceded him that passed away before he did. He had a daughter that had ALS. She passed away as an adult, and he had two sons. The younger son, he passed away from an illness. So there really was, more to Bob Uecker than meets the eye, and it really puts his humor into context. Sure, he was a funny guy, but you wonder if part of that humor was covering up, the pain that he was experiencing in his personal life. I listened to the Met game on the radio. Yeah, I'm talking about the Mets again. What am I doing? But he was doing the broadcast for that last Brewers game, and I heard it, and that's somewhat serendipitous because obviously now that's his last game. There was recently a story done on him in December on CBS Sunday Morning News, and coming away from that, I felt like that we were going to get at least one more season of Bob Uecker. So even though he was 90 when he passed away, and he was, well aged at this point, it still took me aback, and I'm still shaking a little bit from it. But what a voice! Really, really sad that he's departed, and the world is emptier.
He was still calling games up until the very, very end last year, man.
Yeah. Well, that's the game that I just mentioned.
That's right. He called the Pete Alonso home run. You could feel the pain in his heart when he was announcing that.
It gets to you when you hear the dejection that he had when Alonso hit that home run, and it's kind of amazing to me how Bob Uecker and Alonso are sort of tied in, this particular year. It's there's something to it. You can make something out of it.
I mean, that was his final call.
Yeah.
That was the final play he called.
Yeah.
So, and I was listening to that as well. I love listening to him on the radio calling the baseball game. Because you guys all know I prefer the radio a lot more over the TV anyway.
Yeah.
So if the Yankees weren't playing, or if it was the West Coast, I'd always bounce around the different radio channels, and it was always a must to catch Uecker on a nightly basis. So I always enjoyed him.
Voice of baseball for me, man. This weekend, in honor of Bob Uecker, I will watch Major League.
Yep.
Gentlemen, we got one more thing.
Everybody's plan today or this weekend is to watch that movie.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, we got one
all
more
three
thing.
of
I
them.
don't mean to hold this to the end, but Monday is a big day for all baseball fans, for Yankees fans in particular. It's something that we all love to debate. We've all got an opinion on it. I've got an opinion on it. I know I have an asshole like everybody else. We got the Hall of Fame on Monday, and it looks like CC Sabathia is going to get into the Hall of Fame. No doubt about it, Ichiro Suzuki is going to get into the Hall of Fame. Now, Ichiro, of course, is going to go in as a Mariner. He should go in as a Mariner. But I definitely take pride that we had a couple of seasons with Ichiro in pinstripes. I take pride that we actually got Ichiro at least to the playoffs when he was in pinstripes back in 2012.
A-Rod in the Rocket, or I don't want it.
It's about damn time they let these guys in. I love CC. I'm happy he's going to get in. He's probably my favorite Yankee pitcher, maybe ever. But the fact that these writers that have a right to vote are holding a grudge against certain players, like Barry Bonds should have been in a long time ago. A-Rod, despite the off-the-field stuff and the fact that he was an asshole for a lot of his career, he's still one of the best to ever step onto a baseball field. So the fact that he's not in the Hall of Fame is a joke, and until they actually correct these mistakes that they constantly make, I look at the Hall of Fame as a joke. I loved going there, I'll tell you that much. When I went there in 2018, it was a great time, but the people that have the right to vote, and they're making it a mockery. So it's a damn shame. We're talking about Dustin Pedroia getting in, but we can't let Alex Rodriguez in.
Right.
Is what we're doing?
Ridiculous.
Well, what's really getting to me, first of all, Rob, you are right. The Hall of Fame has become an absolute joke. Todd Helton, Jeff Bagwell, Ted Simmons, Alan Trammell is in the Hall of Fame. My opinion on the Hall of Fame is this, okay? We may not agree on everything, but my feeling what a Hall of Famer is it is a player that stands amongst the players who are the most integral to the history and the vitality of baseball. I think that the players should be voted in not just on how good they were, but on what they meant to the game of baseball. And what I see the writers doing is they are primarily voting in players based on what kind of a career they had. In my opinion, it'll never happen, but I think it would do Major League Baseball some good if they just put together something like an MLB Dean's List of statistical accomplishment. Now, that may sound like a joke that Bob Uecker might come up with, but why not? Because all the writers do is they go into their stats and they manipulate these stats to come up with their decision on why to vote and why not to vote for players. It's getting ridiculous. It's becoming too stat heavy. The biggest joke of letting any player in that I've heard comes from Steve Jaffe on his reason why he voted for Tim Raines. He said he voted for Tim Raines. One stipulation was that Tim Raines holds the record for the most compiled triples and doubles in a career. Do you guys watch a game because of the compilation of triples and doubles? I mean, that's sort of like home runs and stolen bases on steroids. You talk about steroids, being a factor. Also, I was listening to John Heyman yesterday. They had on his podcast with Joel Sherman, which I do recommend, but they had David Wright. And John Heyman said that he gave a vote for David Wright in sympathy in that if David Wright doesn't get a certain amount of votes, he's going to be off the ballot. So he gave David Wright a sympathy vote. Well, I understand the sympathy. That infuriates me because for the writers, it should only be a question of this. Do you think that a player is or is not a Hall of Famer? Don't not vote for a guy because it's their first time on the ballot. Don't vote for a guy because you have a personal connection for them. That's an abuse of the vote, and that skews the vote. The question to you is very simple. Is the player a Hall of Famer? Are they not a Hall of Famer? If you think they are, you put them on. If you don't think they are, you don't put them on. That's what we want. So you're right, Rob. The Hall of Fame is a joke.
The Hall of Fame needs to be like a panel of like old school like managers, like a Joe Torre, those kind of guys. The old school managers plus old pros, the old pros because they played with these guys. Sit them down in a panel, and that counts for like 40% of the vote, and then the rest also on another percentage of the vote goes to the fans. Because the fans deserve a vote as well, because a lot of them are smarter than these freaking writers.
Yeah, the Hall of Fame.
The writers have an agenda. And you can't tell me they don't have an agenda because one of them voted against Derek Jeter. So these people don't deserve a vote.
Yeah.
If you don't vote for Derek Jeter, you don't deserve a vote.
Right.
If your vote is that bad, you don't deserve to vote the next time. There should be some kind of thing to it. But I think pros and managers is the way to go with that. I think in order to make it fairer, because there is no one person that played the game of baseball and watched the game of baseball thoroughly and couldn't say that A-Rod was one of the greatest players to ever walk the earth, and Roger Clemens was probably the best pitcher of like 50, 60 years. He was freaking insane. Unbelievable player. So only the writers who are holier than thou would choose these to make it the Hall of Nice or the Hall of Mid. Fuck the Hall of Mid. Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
it's like the Hall of Confusion. The Hall of Fame has become like it's like a Yankee fan going onto a Yankees podcast and saying how he feels bad for Mets fans. That's what the
yeah, I was so past Let's remember that.
Listen, I want to see his card if he voted for David Cohn, because I didn't see David Cohn get many sympathy votes when he was only on there for 1 year. So
yeah,
I don't want to hear that sympathy vote shit. I mean, come on, Heyman's got to do better than that. And if he feels like Wright should get a shot to get in, like did he vote for Mattingly as well? Because there was another player that because of a back injury, that career's quite short. So there's always somebody else that could be compared to, whether you're a Hall of Fame player or not.
Yeah,
there's that's what we do. We we compare players. But I think it's definitely broken. I think it's gotten to the point where it's becoming a public spectacle for the Hall of Fame, where they feel they have to get somebody in every year. If there's nobody on the ballot that makes the cut, sorry, don't force it. I think that's what happened the last couple of years. I think they forced players in so they could still have their ceremony, because they feel like if they don't have a ceremony, they're gonna be criticized.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, they're actually making it worse by just letting anybody in. It's the Hall now. It's not the Hall of Fame. It's the Hall of the really, really good.
Yeah, right. Tats, I think your dog's touching fur.
They're ready. They're ready for. But that's going to wrap things up. We will continue this whole thing chat on Monday then. Make sure you do tune in for the shows this weekend, especially with Lynn and Sierra on the upper deck. And we will be back Monday, 10 a.m. as always. And we also have, I'd say the best for last, buddy. We also, make sure you do tune in tomorrow, because it's going to be another episode of Yankified with Donald Stewart. So make sure you do tune in tomorrow, as we have shows all the time.
Let's remind you.
And so with that, make sure you hit that like button, hit that sub, share this out with your friends, your family, the strangers on the corner. This has been Pinstripe Chronicles, where fans become family. And remember, with us pinstripes to pride and play hard.